Hear the Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke. On one occasion when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. Just then, in front of him, there was a man who had dropsy, and Jesus asked the lawyers and the Pharisees, "Is it lawful to cure people on the Sabbath or not?" But they were silent. So Jesus took him and healed him and sent him away. Then he said to them, "If one of you has a child or an ox that has fallen into a well, will you not immediately pull it out on a Sabbath day?" And they could not reply to this. Today's Gospel reading is the third time in Luke's Gospel in which we hear of Jesus provoking the ire of his critics by healing on the Sabbath. Now, you'll probably be aware already that, somewhat like the Christian church today, first century Judaism wasn't a homogeneous, neat and tidy affair, with clear-cut rules and a common understanding of how people should best and properly worship, or, indeed, care for one another. Far from it. Then, just as now, there were competing groups, with differing understandings of how the Jews were supposed to apply the law, and how to interpret the world around them in light of that understanding. And what was permitted on the Sabbath was a matter of interpretation, with Jesus' understanding being at odds with the more conservative and traditional voices who, typically, were also the voices of authority and power. Speaking truth to power is never easy, but at least as a general rule we are unlikely to lose our heads when we challenge those who are in authority today. In first century Judea, however, it was a slightly more precarious affair, and this might be why, in healing the man with dropsy, Jesus preempts the objection he anticipated from the Pharisees by asking them in advance if it was lawful for him to heal on the Sabbath. Taking their silence to be permission, he proceeded to do so. But what is not clear is why the man suffering from dropsy was even there. We are told that Jesus was dining at the house of the leader of the Pharisees, a leader in the faith, and dropsy, just like many other conditions, was understood by the Jews to be a punishment from God. In a manner similar to those poor souls afflicted with leprosy or any other communicable illness, sufferers were deemed spiritually unclean and therefore entirely unacceptable as dinner company. Which really begs the question, why was the dropsy man invited to dinner at the Pharisee's house? Was it a test for Jesus to see if he could heal him? Or was he invited as a trap to see if Jesus would heal him? I don't know, and I'll leave you to ponder that one, for I don't think we will ever truly know how he came to be present. But, to be fair, the Pharisees were themselves in tension with the traditionalist temple authorities, known as the Sadducees. They were willing to embrace at least the possible variations in interpretation that following the oral tradition permitted, and not necessarily to follow slavishly the written law as handed down from the time of Moses. In short, they were at least open to interpretation and hence the possibility of change, that change which Jesus certainly brought into their midst. Jesus was forcing the Pharisees to re-examine the traditions and legal interpretations of their faith, and that's not a bad thing. We too, just like the Pharisees, need to ask ourselves repeatedly why we do what it is that we do when in worship. Just like the Pharisees, we need to continuously examine even whether what we are doing honours the God we worship or misses the mark in some way, and perhaps to be open to change what needs changing. And the we there, well, that's all of us. The parish of St. Mary, the city, the deanery, and the diocese. And that duty of examining what we do and why we do it has come to the fore in the past year. Whilst none of us wished for what has happened in the past 8 months, it does nonetheless provide us with the opportunity to examine what we do and how we do it. It gives us the chance to redesign the church God has called us to be, holding on to our traditions but not allowing them to define who we are, recognizing that if we truly hold ourselves to be Christians, then that means that we follow one who leads us in change and in doing things differently. And that is not just a job for the bishops or the diocese or the vicar. It is the calling of each and every one of us to be open to changing what we do and keeping Christ at the centre with his message of compassion and love, as shown to the man with the withered arm, the woman who could not stand, and today the man with dropsy, all of whom he healed when tradition said that he should not. But he went ahead, and he did it anyway.